Alright, so I decided to do another comic video, and I decided to, since I already talked about the first symbiote character, which I think is very, very popular, I figured I'd talk about the other symbiote character who's very popular, maybe even more popular than Carnage, and also my second favorite Spider-Man villain. This is my video explaining about Venom. So let's go ahead and kick this off. So, Venom's origin starts all the way in a mini-series called Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars. Basically what this was, in the story, tons of different Marvel superheroes and tons of different Marvel supervillains were sent to this world called Battle World, where this alien entity, the Beyonder, made them fight to see which side was powerful. He was curious to see which was better, evil or good. Obviously, the good guys won, so you had people like the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, and then you had Spider-Man. And then you had villains like Doc Ock, the Lizard, Doctor Doom, of course, Galactus, the Wrecking Crew, Molecule Man, just a whole bunch of others. So, in the middle of this battle, Spider-Man, while he was fighting the Absorbing Man, his old red and blue costume was shredded. So, in need of another costume, he was told by Thor and the Hulk that he could go to this machine, and all he had to do was think of what he wants, and a costume would just come right on out. So, Spider-Man goes to this thing, he thinks about what he wants, and this black ball comes out. So he grabs hold of it like this, and then it starts oozing all over him, and then it makes this awesome logo here. The reason it was black is because apparently he was subconsciously, or he figured, it was because he was subconsciously thinking about the new Spider-Woman's costume. And the new Spider-Man woman's costume was black and white, just like this one. So that was the case here. And then the thing about this one is that it responded to all his thoughts. It also proved pretty useful because it could also give him unlimited webbing, and it also augmented all of his superpowers. So he was very happy with it, but it was still kind of like, what is this? And then eventually, after the Secret Wars, this is not the first issue that Spider-Man appeared in the black costume in the Amazing title, but he still eventually moved over, and then it became a big thing in the Amazing Spider-Man title. So, basically, throughout the course of this storyline, there was only like 6 or 7 issues, where he wore it. The symbiote costume in the Amazing Spider-Man storyline. Of course, you had all the other tie-ins, like Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, the other tie-in issues. This being in the main Spider-Man title, this was when he first wore it. Or this was the first time when he wore it. So basically, throughout this, Spider-Man was able to find, or Peter Parker was able to find, that he was able to, not only could the costume do everything that, he was used to it doing, but he was also found that it was able to mimic any piece of clothing that he wanted. Basically, he thought about what he wanted to wear, and the costume would turn into that. So he didn't have to, throw his clothes in an alley somewhere. So he was very happy with it, but again, still kind of like, what's going on here? So, Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic, the leader, and one of the brilliant minds of the Marvel Universe, offered Spider-Man to test it way back even in the Secret Wars, and Spider-Man didn't get around to doing it because he'd never found time. So, moving on to Amazing Spider-Man number 258, basically in this issue, Spider-Man finds out that the costume is actually alive. He finally gets around to Reed Richards because he finds that he's been sleeping through all these days. And the thing is that the costume would actually go over him while he was asleep, and basically Peter was asleep the entire time, but the costume would go out and fight crime as Spider-Man. So Peter would always wake up, exhausted and trying to figure out what's going on. So that was kind of an interesting thing. So, in this, he finally goes to the Baxter Building, finally goes to Mr. Fantastic, and he gets the suit tested, and he finds that it is actually alive. So, Mr. Fantastic and the Human Torch use a sonic blaster that basically gets the suit off of him, because the symbiote does not like fire, and it doesn't like very loud noise. So, with that sonic blaster, they were able to get it off of him. And the Fantastic Four lock it up, and they keep holding on to it, and then Peter goes back to his life, really. And then this really isn't in any part of the storyline, but I did want to point this out. This issue right here, the next issue, 259, basically this is just, want to point out, because Spider-Man's now back in his this is the first time we see, as it can say here, the original is back. So this is Spider-Man going back to red and blue. You don't even see him in costume till the very end, because this issue is really just about Mary Jane Watson's past, which is an interesting read. So I would definitely recommend reading this if you have not already, if you're a Mary Jane fan, which I am. And then again, in Amazing Spider-Man number 261, again, not really a key issue in the Venom saga, but this one is actually, there's one page of the alien costume escaping from the Baxter building, and it goes on its hunt for Spider-Man to try and find him. So the suit kind of goes on. It goes on different people trying to figure out, what to do. Different. Usually it's in these tie-in issues where you find it. But eventually, in Web of Spider-Man number 1, Spider-Man, or it disguises itself as Peter Parker's old costume, and essentially it gets on him, and then it obviously tries to bond with him. So Peter can't get to the Fantastic Four, and so he does what actually is done in the Spider-Man 3 movie. The one thing that movie did right was actually getting the ending of how Spider-Man got rid of the suit. So he goes up to the church tower, and these bells go off, and since the suit doesn't like loud noise, he lures it there, and he's able to get it off. Almost kills himself, but the symbiote actually saves him, but then disappears through the cracks of the church. And that's the last we see of it for a while. So, fast forward here, and it's in the late 80s. So, basically, throughout the comics, there were different clues that other people were giving us that there was that someone else had gotten the suit. And we don't know who it is, but we find pretty quickly that someone else has it. And then in Amazing Spider-Man 300, which I don't have, unfortunately, that is the first time we see Venom. Eddie, and we learn that he was a journalist named Eddie Brock, who his wife essentially was left him because he printed a false story, and so he went to the church wanting to commit suicide, and praying before he committed suicide because he was very religious. And obviously Spider-Man from this issue, the symbiote went through the cracks of the church, got on him, and bada bing, bada boom, Venom was born. Brock hated Spider-Man for exposing him as a fraud, and then the suit obviously hated him for rejecting it in this issue, so the two got along very well, and they started to cause havoc and destruction, and try and destroy Spider-Man. So Venom became a big force in Spider-Man. He was pretty much in almost every Spider-Man comic. Eventually, though, if you watched my Carnage video, you'll know that after the whole situation with Carnage, Venom was put in jail again. So, in Amazing Spider-Man 374, Venom goes for revenge one last time with Spider-Man. And essentially, there was a storyline where we thought that Peter Parker's parents were back. They weren't, of course. They were clones created by the Green Goblin. But essentially, Venom captured them and said, okay, now I'm going to go after Spider-Man. So then, in Amazing Spider-Man 375, right here, which is actually a really, really cool cover. But essentially, in this issue, Venom decides he's going to make peace with Spider-Man, because Spider-Man, during the fight that they're having in the comic, he actually saves Eddie Brock's ex-wife from dying. He saves her from, I believe it was like a lamppost that was about to fall on her. So because of that, Venom decides to make a deal with Spider-Man. He says, okay, stay out of our way, we'll stay out of yours. And so that's pretty much how it is. And Spider-Man is like, well, yeah. He doesn't really know, but he is happy to get Venom out of his life, and hey, he figures that, there are other superheroes in the city that they can deal with. They can deal with him. So then he makes the deal, and Venom part ways with Spider-Man. And so Venom becomes an anti-hero, essentially. So, now that Venom is on his own, we get bombarded with Venom books. There were so many. For instance, this one is Lether Protector, which is basically his very first solo book. This is the very first comic that Venom appears in as his own. So this is Venom number 1, Lether Protector. So this was one. He had Funeral Pyre with the Punisher. he had so many different miniseries, and then obviously another miniseries just titled Venom. So pretty cool right there. So Venom is going to go on to do many different things because, again, Marvel is going to milk him because he's very, very popular. So, again, fast forward through. Venom's been doing all this stuff. And we'll flash forward here to another story called Marvel Knights, which you can see right there. And basically, in this story, the Green Goblin does a lot of different things to mess with Spider-Man's head. But that's not the point. The point being is that in the midst of all this, in the middle of it, there's a mini-story called Venomous. And basically, Eddie Brock, Venom, this guy, he figures out that he has cancer. And because he and Spider-Man are no longer enemies, he decides, hey, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to go ahead and live the rest of my days. And he decides to basically sell the suit and give the money to charity, essentially. So, with that, the suit is auctioned off, and a crime boss named Fortunato buys it for his son, because his son's just kind of a weak guy. And so, essentially that's what happens. So the suit gets sold, and so Fortunato's son is now the new Venom. And he attacks Spider-Man at one of his high school reunion parties. And so Spider-Man comes in, stops him, and then Fortunato, again, being the weakling, and kind of freaked out about this, he realizes he's getting his butt kicked by Spider-Man. He decides to take off. And the symbiote's kind of like, what are you doing, dude? Come on. Brock wouldn't have done this. And so he says, well, I can't fight him. And then the suit says, you know what? You need a little bit more venom. So as he's jumping over between two skyscrapers, the suit rips off of him and says, I'm going to go ahead and find a new host. Fortunato drops. Dead. And that's the last we see of it, so now the symbiote is now on its own. In this storyline, though, the suit finds Matt Gargan, who, for those of you who don't know, is the Scorpion. So the suit now bonds with him, and now he is the new Venom. So for the longest time, till about 2011, Matt Gargan was Venom. Now, Eddie Brock was in a hospital for a very, very long time, and it wasn't revealed until later that he would later become Anti-Venom, which is this white version of Venom, and obviously he kind of sucked. Again, another anti-hero, but he was still someone for Spider-Man to fight, but, I mean, nothing too interesting there. And then in Amazing Spider-Man 654, we see that Spider-Man, or Matt Gargan, goes back to being Scorpion. The symbiote finally leaves him, and he becomes Scorpion again. But it also says right here, the debut of the all-new Venom. What happens in this issue is that Flash Thompson, the guy who bullied Peter Parker throughout his high school career, became Venom, or was in the Army, and because he was in the Army, he lost both of his feet. So, S.H.I.E.L.D. basically says, okay, we have this Venom symbiote, you can use it and become Agent Venom. So, Flash Thompson bonds with it, and obviously he gets his own series called Venom. So this is what he looks like right now. This is just added for effect. But basically, at the end of the issue, the professors, or the scientists, basically say eventually it's going to take over him. But for now, we're gonna let him do our bidding. So currently, Venom is Flash Thompson. And right now, we don't really know what's up with Eddie Brock right now. We don't really know what he's doing. But what we do know is that Flash Thompson is currently the new Venom, and is right now working for S.H.I.E.L.D. And again, we'll just have to see how it goes. But that's the end of this video here about Venom. But please, leave a comment, video response, something. I want to know, do you like Venom? Is he your favorite villain? Or who is your favorite Spider-Man villain? Or what was your favorite incarnation of Venom? So anyways, thanks for checking this out. Later, guys.